it is, round two at the Garden. President-elect Donald Trump returning to Madison Square Garden last night. He attended a UFC fight nearly 3 weeks after holding that controversial rally that was right before the election. Defending heavyweight champion John Bones Jones defeated his challenger Stipe Miocic in the third round, then handed his title belt.
Hi, Eric. Hello, everyone. I'm Arthel Neville. So the president-elect was greeted by cheering crowds and thunderous applause when he arrived at Madison Square Garden. All this less than 1 month after stirring up a firestorm of controversy at a huge campaign rally in the exact same venue. Now, yesterday's event was packed with Trump allies, supporters, and members of his inner circle, including House Speaker Mike Johnson and many of his prospective picks for his incoming cabinet.
Yeah, it looks like Mike Johnson about to take on Kid Rock there. Well, former Chief of Staff for Senator Mitch McConnell, Brian McGuire, is there. There he is. He'll give us his take on the Trump cabinet lineup in a moment. But first, let's hear from Bill Illusion. He's live at West Palm Beach, Florida, near Mar-a-Lago with the very latest from there. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Eric, good afternoon to you. Well, we expect President-elect Donald Trump to fly back here to Palm Beach at some point today. He'll be coming in from New York, where you guys were just talking about. He had a big night last night visiting that UFC match, where it would be an understatement to say he got quite a warm welcome. Take a listen.
25, soon to be 47, President-elect Donald Trump.
So huge applause for Trump as he walked into that. Huge applause for Trump as he walked into that UFC arena. You can see him hugging Joe Rogan there, shaking his hand. They had a lengthy exchange. Joe Rogan endorsed him right before Election Day. Then UFC fighter John Jones right there. Right after he won his fight, he did Trump's signature dance moves. He pointed at him. He flashed him a thumbs up. Then he gave him his championship belt. So this was a triumphant return for Donald Trump to Madison Square Garden after that rally, where you can see he took pretty much a victory lap there. As for what happens when they get back here to Palm Beach today, they got more work to do. Here's where we stand right now. They're still building out this new administration. Election Day, Trump has already made more than 20 new picks for his administration. There's been some controversial picks, some that seem to get bipartisan support. There's also been speculation about potentially using recess appointments to push them in. Here's what House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Fox this morning.
I've demonstrated over and over that we will have fidelity to our oath, which is to uphold the Constitution. So we evaluate all these things very carefully. I'm sympathetic to all these arguments. As I said, we'll have to see how this develops. I am very hopeful that the Senate will do its job.
And one of the biggest positions we're still waiting to hear on is obviously Treasury Secretary. So far, there have been two names that have been floated for that spot. That would be Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick. And earlier this morning, Donald Trump Jr. was on Fox as well, talking about what exactly they're looking for with these cabinet nominations. Take a listen.
We're not just randomly picking a name out of a hat. We're showing him lists of 10 or 12 people for every position. So we do have backup plans, but I think we're obviously going with the strongest candidates first. Some of them are going to be controversial. They're controversial because they'll actually get things done.
And it's early on this Sunday, so far, no new announcements yet for that future administration, but we'll be keeping tabs on everything out here in Palm Beach. Most of the announcements have been coming during those mid to late afternoon hours, so we'll wait and see, guys. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Bill. Now the Rumble moves to Capitol Hill. Good to see you near Mar-a-Lago.
Yep.
Arthel?
Okay, guys. Well, let's bring in Republican strategist Brian McGuire. He's former chief of staff for outgoing Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and now policy director at Brownstein Hyatt, Farber Schreck. Good to have you. So, all right, let's start here. You know that President-elect Trump is a master of marketing and televised images. So is there anything to make of his chosen UFC entourage?
I think it's great. I think, this is a sector of the electorate that doesn't feel like it's been spoken to. The president isn't just speaking to it, but it's sort of welcoming everybody in, going to them. It's a real sort of statement about the power of the disintermediation that this campaign has really perfected in sort of going around the legacy media to reach people. I think that they're continuing that now clearly. And, it's exciting to this segment of the electorate. And and not a narrow one. I mean, the UFC itself isn't just hugely popular, but you're just sort of making the statement over and over again that we're talking to people who feel like they've been ignored or overlooked or even talked down to over the last 4 years. And I think it's just a great strategy. It's clearly effective. It was clearly helpful in the campaign. And the fact that the president continues to sort of exercise that, I think, is great.
All right. Well, then what's your take on the omnipresence of Elon Musk, including his permission to participate or be privy to high-level interactions with foreign dignitaries? What do you think of that?
Well, this Doge Commission, I think it's going to be a little bit outside of government. It'll work with allied folks inside the government, but I think they'll be careful about those boundaries. And I think it's a illustration of the fact the president is willing to call on people who don't have traditional backgrounds to sort of fix problems that have proven to be insoluble over the last several decades. Government spending, government waste, you hear about it.
But 1 second, Brian. 1 second, Brian. Yep. Excuse me, because I know you have talking points, and I appreciate that. But Elon Musk is there talking to high-level, he's involved in high-level conversations with foreign dignitaries. Is that okay?
Elon Musk has been very involved in government contracting for many years. I think he's, very familiar with these circles. He's been very, involved in these circles on high levels with sensitive information. He's been involved with the Defense Department at high levels. I don't think that anything that's happening so far has triggered any, significant concerns. And, if there were something tripped, there's plenty of people who would be interested in, looking into that, but I haven't seen anything yet that's of any particular concern.
Okay, we're going to move on now. Your party, of course, is also poised to control both chambers of Congress, but if passed as prologue, that might be over in 2 years. So first off, let me play some sound from Speaker Johnson on the first 100 days.
The new reform agenda begins in earnest as soon as President Donald J. Trump takes the office in January, and we have a full agenda to run. It's going to be a very aggressive first 100 days of the new Congress, and we've gotten all the members of Congress ready for that. The House has been preparing for this for almost a year, and now the Senate, under its new leadership, Leader-elect Thune, he and I met this week. We talked about this aggressive agenda, and he told me he is ready to go and deliver on that America First, those America First policies. So it'll be a very busy time for Congress and a good time for the country.
So Brian, what aspects of the GOP agenda do you expect them to prioritize, and how would that agenda benefit Americans?
Well, I think Americans are interested in seeing an extension of the 2016 tax cuts. That's something that I think will be highly prioritized in a reconciliation bill. I think, a lot of folks feel like the administration has been really overly aggressive on regulations. I think you're going to see a lot of congressional review acts. There were 16 that were, passed in the first Trump administration. There's as many as 100 available to them, regulations that could be reversed given the amount of time, depending on the amount of time they have on the Senate floor. I think this Doge Commission is an interesting initiative that the president has established. I think, they'll find real ways to cut back on government waste and, administrative bloat. Immigration obviously is something that a lot of the voters expressed a strong interest in getting a handle on. When you got 40% of Latino voters saying that this was their top priority, this is clearly something where there is a clear mandate for the president to do something to secure the southern border.
Okay, so we'll be watching out for that as well, how that's going to play out. You mentioned the Senate floor, and of course you were Mitch McConnell's chief of staff. So if you were advising newly elected Senate Majority Leader John Thune, what would you tell him?
Well, Senator Thune doesn't need any advice from me, but I think he's, got incredible experience. He was there in 2016, when they passed the last tax bill. He's on the Senate Finance Committee. He's intimately familiar with all of the provisions that need to be extended. He is extremely effective and will be very effective at corralling members to unify behind the president's agenda. I think he's the right pick at the right time, and there will be close coordination with the administration and the House. And I think Republicans are excited about the unity that we're enjoying right now and the ability to do some really important things that the public has asked us to do following the election.
Okay, let me squeeze in really quickly, because now that Senator McConnell has stepped down as the longest serving Senate leader in history, with plans, as you know, to complete his Senate term, which ends in 2027 January, should we expect bold moves from him over the next 2 years?
Leader McConnell has made it clear that he's going to focus on foreign policy and, defense. I think he fully appreciates the dangers in the world that we face right now, and is going to use whatever time he has left in the Senate to focus on that important issue. And I think he'll be extremely effective, and, look forward to seeing what he does with that.
Okay, we'll be watching as well. Republican strategist Brian McGuire, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Arthel. Good to see you.
Well, President Biden's Latin American trip continues today as a tour of the Amazon rainforest. This on the heels of his third and likely final meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This comes as the Biden administration is seeking to secure U.S. ties with China ahead of President-elect Trump's transition to office. Senior national correspondent Kevin Court live now in Washington with more on the president's trip. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Eric. History in the making, indeed, as the president is set now to deliver remarks on climate conservation in Brazil, becoming the first sitting U.S. president in history to visit the Amazon rainforest, as you point out. Mr. Biden, of course, has made addressing climate change a key part of his policy agenda, with his new visit set to highlight his commitment to combating global deforestation and conservation, according to White House officials. Now, that comes on the heels of the APEC conference in Peru, where Mr. Biden held his last bilat with his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping, in the hopes, again, of solidifying ties ahead of what's expected to be a bit of a retrenchment of sorts, administration's protectionist policies. Surprisingly, Mr. Biden found himself cast in the back row on the right near the end in the leader's photo, something we have never seen before from an American president. Now, that stop, Eric, was part of an ambitious international agenda that'll see the president crisscross the globe in the coming days, including the G20, where economic cooperation and global stability remain very hot topics, again, with some concerns about how things might change in the coming months in the new Trump administration. And this is all happening ahead of the president's return here to Washington, where he will immediately get down to work with congressional lawmakers. Again, this effort to cement some of his own political priorities before leaving office, including funding for the wars in Israel and Ukraine, and yes, finding some cash to fund those major climate initiatives here at home, Eric.
All right, Kevin, thanks so much. Arthel.
Well, Eric, of course, President-elect Trump's nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services is being met with a lot of criticism. But what could we expect if Kennedy does run the agency?
Dave McCormick were in the opposite situation where he was down 15 to 17,000 votes. He would absolutely want to have every last vote counted as well, too. And Bob Casey has never claimed fraud. No one's claiming that there's any kinds of actual cheating on our side. Calling and counting every vote, and that's where we're at. And that's the law.
Okay, so that's Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman weighing in on the recount for the Senate race in his state, where Democrat Bob Casey is waiting to hear from the court before he concedes. Meanwhile, some state Democrats are in hot water after seemingly admitting to counting invalid ballots. Let's go to Madeline Rivera. She has the very latest. Madeline.
Hi, good afternoon, Arthel. Well, the process of counting ballots in the Keystone State is not only tedious, it's becoming contentious. And there's now a flurry of litigation over which votes should count. So under state rules, provisional ballots must be signed in 2 places and mail-in votes must be dated. But election boards in at least 4 counties, Bucks, Philadelphia, Montgomery, and Center, have voted to count ballots which were improperly filled out. Local Democratic officials have defended their actions, saying in part, doing something as simple as not writing a date doesn't warrant throwing out ballots. Their decisions, though, fly in the face of state law and have been slammed not only by Republicans. In a new piece, the Washington Post editorial board calls the attempts to defy the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's ruling corrosive to democracy. They add county officials do not get to decide whether a legal requirement is material and must be followed. Courts do, and they have spoken clearly. Republican Dave McCormick's campaign and the Republican National Committee are asking the state Supreme Court to affirm its ruling. They maintain the recount, which is expected to cost about $1 million, won't change the outcome of the race. At the moment, Democratic incumbent Senator Bob Casey trails McCormick by about 17,000 votes. Here's legal expert Jonathan Turley weighing in.
You still need to have a higher yield because you got to pick up about 20,000 or so votes. And some of those ballots obviously are going to go for your opponent. So you need a much higher yield. And that is extremely unlikely. That's why the AP called the race some time ago.
Casey has not conceded. His campaign points out in 2022, McCormick filed a lawsuit during the GOP Senate primary saying undated ballots should be counted. Arthel.
Madeline Rivera, thank you. Eric.
Got it.
Well, President Trump his pick to head the Health and Human Services Agency, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., promises to make America healthy again. But you know, Mr. Kennedy is under a lot of criticism. Supporters say he will revamp the nation's health system to address problems like what he calls chronic disease epidemics, processed foods, and obesity. While others say Kennedy is unqualified to run the agency, pointing to his vaccine skepticism, embracing of what they say are conspiracy theories, and cutting disease research. Here is the former acting director of the Centers for Disease Control.
I am outraged because lives are at stake here. The head of Health and Human Services touches programs that affect every single life in our country. I've been focusing mainly on the public health impacts. And to have someone leading HHS who is one of the biggest deniers of vaccines in our country would undermine the confidence in that program and likely would cost lives.
So what can we expect, and will that happen? North Carolina Republican Congressman Greg Murphy joins us, who knows a bit about this because he's also a doctor. Congressman and doctor, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Eric.
Do you think that Mr. Kennedy should be confirmed?
You know, I think President Trump has shown that during his nominations, he's picking disruptors. He's picking people that are going to shake up the departments. You know, I think that it's important that individuals who lead agencies not necessarily are subject matter experts, but they put people around them that are going to be subject matter experts. For example, you know, I've been in medicine for 35 years. I'm a co-chair of our Doctors Caucus. I look forward to working with whomever, and if it's RFK, it's RFK, to actually make our nation healthier. We have a lot of work to do, especially with the obesity epidemic, diabetes, and so many of the other chronic diseases that we're dealing with. I look forward to working with them and being a resource.
Yeah, he's talking about banning food additives, for example, processed food, this sort of stuff. I mean, look, how do your Twinkies stay fresh? Have you seen some of the ingredients in some of these? Yeah. Aren't some of these needed, or does he have a point when it comes to what we're eating, what our kids are eating?
I think he does have a point. I think if you look at our food compared to European food, how much fresher it is and how much healthier, thinner individuals are overseas. I do think this is a target-rich environment for taking out so much of what we've had as far as additives in American foods, preservatives, etc. I do think it's okay to look back at these things and see what is needed, what really is not needed.
At the same time, as you hear critics and you know, they predict people will die because of Mr. Kennedy's stewardship with his questioning of vaccines. Here's Kathleen Sebelius, the former secretary of HHS under President Obama.
I think it's totally disqualifying for anyone who seeks to lead the major health agency in this country and one of the leaders in the world to just unequivocally say there is no safe and effective vaccine. That in and of itself, from the bully pulpit of HHS, could end up killing people, could end up harming children. My grandson is too young to get a lot of vaccinations yet, and having him exposed to unvaccinated people with polio and measles is a terrifying thought.
Do you think that will happen, or do you think that's alarmist?
No, I think it's absolutely alarmist. Look, we know that certain vaccines are needed. If you look at measles, you look at polio. But sadly, what happened during the pandemic is you had Fauci saying that everybody needed COVID vaccines. The purpose of a vaccine is to take at-risk populations to decrease the severity of disease. The CDC right now is pushing and saying that kids less than 6 months and older should get the COVID vaccine. That's absolutely ridiculous. So I think the pendulum swung way too far, and it's okay to question some of the vaccine narratives that gone in the country. I'm pro-vaccine for those populations that need it. Does it need to be thrown out? Absolutely not. And again, it's going to be a discussion of experts that need to occur that has not heretofore occurred.
And talking about experts, though, they point to his record, saying that he's linked vaccines to autism, that falsely claimed the coronavirus is, quote, one of the deadliest virus ever made. He's promoting raw milk. There's a reason that it's pasteurized. And, of course, the concerns about vaccines, measles, this sort of thing, considering what happened in America and Samoa. Are you troubled by that he may not know exactly what he's talking about completely and will not rely on the experts?
Well, I'm not going to say I'm going to agree with him on everything. In fact, there's several things I don't agree with him on. That said, things like direct-to-consumer advertising, which has no place in the U.S., is one of the things we do agree upon. But again, I think this is a disruptor, a healthy disruptor of what's gone on, so we just don't blatantly believe everything that we've been told. Sadly enough, I'm going to go back to the pandemic. It destroyed trust in doctors. It destroyed the Americans' belief in our healthcare system. And it's okay to shake it back up again to help restore that trust in American medicine.
He's also talked about cutting research in half at the NIH. I mean, is this helpful? How do we find, new drugs, new vaccines, exomes, this sort of thing, if it's not researched?
No, I agree. I agree that we do need to have research. My gosh, I look at the last 30 years that I've been in medicine and the number of cures that have exploded to help people live longer, healthier lives. That said, there is a lot of fraud. I wouldn't say fraud, I'm sorry. There is a lot of waste that goes on in American research. And again, it is okay to question that and okay to bring us back and say what really is good, what's not as good, so they don't get a blank credit card to continue spending on research that may not be really necessary for Americans, for the American public.
I guess bottom line is, do you think that we will be healthier? Do you think that some of these issues will be addressed, and things that will be addressed that haven't been addressed in the past will be made public, and we'll hear more about that? Or do you fear, as critics say, that he's a danger to our society?
I believe, Eric, I believe that's alarmist. I do think we need to pull the Band-Aid off, pull the scab off on American health. You look at the obesity that goes on in our country. I look at it in eastern North Carolina, where the rate of obesity is just terrible, and the subsequent chronic diseases, kidney disease, heart disease, diabetes, all the things that go along with this that are not necessarily present in any other country or in other countries. I do think it's okay to disrupt it, and I do think it's okay to question what we're doing in American medicine today.
And finally, I can let you go. Your specialty is urology. Would you give a message to the men who are watching right now? Sometimes you may not get your PSA. That's so important. I know it firsthand.
Yeah, PSA screening is so critical, but it's also critical that it's being done with discussion, with info for your lives. I know this personally, not that I've had a prostate cancer diagnosis, but I have so many friends my age who've been diagnosed and then, sadly enough, would have fallen fatal to that disease. It is critical that men get rectal examination and a PSA.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I was, my doctor called me and they diagnosed me with cancer at one point, but please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congressman Greg Murphy, thank you for your prescription and thank you for your analysis today.
Great, Eric. Have a great day.
You too.
Yeah.
Arthel?
Yeah, very important information. Thank you, Eric. Next, we're going to take a look at what's next in two trials that have caught the attention of many here in the U.S. What can we expect this week in the murder trial of Laken Riley and the Daniel Penny chokehold trial? Stay tuned to Fox Daily. Court resumes tomorrow in Georgia in the morning, and Madison Scarpino is there now in Atlanta with a preview. Madison, hi.
Hi, Arthel. Yeah, more graphic testimony centered around Riley's brutal death is set to resume in the morning. Now, it's the prosecution who is expected to continue calling witnesses as they lay out their case against the 26-year-old illegal immigrant. Now, 9 people have taken the stand so far after striking opening statements from both the prosecution and Ibarra's defense. The prosecutor says Ibarra went out hunting for women and attempted to rape Riley the day she was murdered. But the defense says the evidence in this case is not strong enough to link Ibarra to the crime. The small Athens courtroom was filled with Riley's family and friends for most of the day, who were visibly shattered. By the time the crime scene investigator took the stand, most of the family left the courtroom. That's when photographs of Riley's injuries and the gory crime scene were showed in court. Ibarra did not change his calm demeanor through most of the trial, but did avoid looking at graphic evidence. The case is a center point in the national immigration debate and played a big role in President-elect Trump's campaign. Trump tapped former ICE Director Tom Homan to be his border czar, and Homan blames the Biden administration and sanctuary cities for this crime.
I hope that every mayor and governor who supports sanctuary cities listens to that tape. Listen to the way that young lady died. Listen to her fight for her life for 17 minutes, fighting for breath, fighting to survive.
Now, again, only the prosecution have called witnesses so far. It's unclear when the defense will call their witnesses, but we do know that both of Ibarra's brothers are subpoenaed to testify. Both of them are charged with having a fake green card and are currently in federal custody. Arthel.
Madison Scarpino, thank you. Eric?
Well, Ethel, another closely watched trial also resumes tomorrow, and this one in New York City. The defense for Marine veteran Daniel Penny will cross-examine the medical examiner about the 2023 subway chokehold death of homeless man Jordan Neely. Then the defense is expected to begin presenting its case to the jury. Alexis McAdams, live here in the New York City newsroom with the very latest on what we can expect tomorrow. Hey, Alexis.
Hey, Eric. So after 2 weeks, the defense is going to get their turn now to defend Daniel Penny and get a chance, like you said, to go after that medical examiner to ask her some questions about those toxicology results. They say this person, Penny, was just trying to protect women and kids from an unhinged man on the New York City subway. Okay, so you can see this here. The 26-year-old has been going into court for days. He's a Marine veteran entering court in New York City. Penny's facing manslaughter charges after investigators say he put Jordan Neely, a homeless man, in a fatal chokehold last May. And that video went viral. Here it is. This is that cell phone video that was captured the day of the incident. It happened on a New York City subway car. And it's now key evidence in this ongoing case. It shows Penny with his arms wrapped around Neely's neck for more than 6 minutes. So that's kind of the key here. More than 6 minutes. The prosecutors say he just held on too long. Penny's defense team says he really only stepped in because Neely was acting unhinged and belligerent on the train, threatening people, and says people were scared. So the medical examiner in this case says Neely died from asphyxia, but questions are remaining about his tox results, as authorities say the homeless man struggled with addiction and mental health issues and did have drugs in his system that day. Now Neely's family is demanding justice.
So yeah, it's real disturbing to see those images, you know what I'm saying? And if anybody's listening, like, I wouldn't want this for nobody, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't want this for nobody. This is, it's real hard to see. Is that it? All right.
And so Penny said to authorities that day that he had no, he was not trying to kill this man. He was just trying to put him in a chokehold to stop this from happening and stop people from being threatened on the train, but that's not what happened. The trials put crime, though, in New York City, especially on the city subway systems, Eric, in the national spotlight, as the former Marine is looking at spending up to 15 years behind bars if he is convicted. So a lot of people are going to watch this closely.
Yeah, they are. Alexis, thank you. Arthel?
Well, Eric, for more on both the Penny and Ibarra trials, let's bring in Guy Lewis, former U.S. attorney and prosecutor. Okay, Mr. Lewis, so the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy on Jordan Neely is set to take the stand for cross-examination. What questions might she face, and what nuggets will each side hope to hear?
So it's very surprising because we know from the direct examination, Arthel, that the medical examiner indicated that she drew the conclusion about death before they even got the toxicology report. I mean, this is sloppy to the nth degree. But I think it's emblematic of what we've seen out of Alvin Bragg's office. Frankly, I don't think Daniel Penny should have been charged in the first place. I think the evidence is overwhelming. I'm sorry for the victim, but he came in with obviously drugs in his system, threatening people, yelling and screaming, and I think Penny stepped in and did the right thing. I don't think he should have been charged.
Now, I do want to read a quote from Dr. Cynthia Harris that she already made in court, and here it is. She says, "I based my decision on the autopsy findings coupled with the video. I did not wait for the toxicology opinion. He could have come back with enough fentanyl to kill an elephant and walked onto the train and got put in a chokehold, and that's how he died." What is the impact on the jury?
Fascinating. I was a prosecutor for a long time, a very aggressive prosecutor, and you're always prepared to change your opinion if the evidence supports it. And in this particular case, Bragg, instead of listening to the evidence, instead of following the rule of law, he didn't allow the case to go to the grand jury. I think the grand jury would have looked at this and said, no true bill. He instead, within 10 days of the events, charged it, didn't interview all the witnesses, didn't review all the evidence, and this is pure, sloppy, politically charged prosecution.
Let me ask you one quick question because I want to move on to the next case. But, you know, there was a lot of public outcry surrounding that case. So might there have been the effort to take it off the street and into the court and get some official answers?
Absolutely. The public came out and, again, rightly said, I saw this video, I saw the chokehold, and I want something to happen. But as a prosecutor, Arthel, you can't allow the public to influence your decision. I mean, it's just so improper. And again, not to bring up the whole Trump matter, but it does remind me of that you, as Bragg campaigns on, hey, I'm going to indict Trump. I'm going to go after Trump.
Yeah, well,
and what does
let's
he do?
not get sidetracked with that, Mr. Lewis. I feel your passion, but I do want to move on to this other case that's very important as well, and that is the Laken Riley case. It was just horrible to hear the testimony and the body cam tape and everything we heard this last week. But illegal immigrant Jose Ibarra opted for a bench trial, as we know, no jury. So what are you expecting from this trial this week?
So it was kind of a surprise, right? A couple of days ago, rather than facing a jury, Ibarra filed a motion to say, hey, Judge, I want you to try the case.
Xin chào tất cả các bạn, chào mừng các bạn đã đến